And now we are going to have a conversation with Yasmine Mohammed, fellow Canadian from Vancouver, prominent human rights activist, former Al-Qaeda bride. She comes from a very hardcore Islamist family. She broke away a number of years ago. Her story is fascinating. She is a force of nature, and it's wonderful to have Yasmine with us in the studio. It is such a pleasure to see you, Yasmine. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Vivian.
You live in Vancouver and have an extraordinary background, by any measure. So, Ashir, I thought that we would just ask Yasmine to start off by telling us where she comes from and how she got to where she is today in 30 seconds. I'm kidding.
45.
Thank you. I mean, you have this really extreme story, and I think it'll be fascinating for people to hear. Born into an Al-Qaeda family, and here you are today in Jerusalem on a trip with Shiraka to understand the complexity of the Middle East. So take us back, Yasmine.
Yeah, so as you say, well, actually, my dad is from Gaza, so I'll go that far back.
Whoa.
Yeah, my dad's born and raised in Gaza, and my mom's born and raised in Cairo, and they met each other in university when Gaza was under Egyptian rule. And together they moved to San Francisco and then later to Vancouver, Canada, where I was born. And then their marriage fell apart, and so my mom ended up getting remarried to a man who was a extremist. So she was his second wife, which is common for those type of men. I went to Islamic school. Like, my life completely changed when this man entered our life. Ended up having to wear hijab, learn Quran. Music is forbidden. Non-Muslim friends is forbidden. Riding a bike is forbidden. Swimming is forbidden. Everything was forbidden. So when I say my life changed, my life completely changed. How old are you at this point? I was 6. Yeah. Wow. I'm 6 years old. And I kept hoping for the day my mom would snap out of it and life would go back to normal. But unfortunately, she became what I call a born-again Muslim. She jumped right into this.
And your dad?
Full-on Islamist. No, my dad was never religious. My mom was never religious either. I mean, if I showed you their wedding photos, you'd be shocked. They just look like, this glamorous couple. They had a belly dancer at their wedding. Yeah, drinks were flowing. Neither of them were religious, but my mom took that turn, and my dad didn't. So even though he's from Gaza, I have to, he's not with us anymore, and I have to say that he never had a problem with Israel or Jewish people. He was a peace activist. And so, when what happened on October 7th happened, my initial thoughts went, obviously seeing Shani Luke and feeling devastated because I know what it's like to be a woman who's a victim of this, ideology that hates women. And then I thought of my father and how heartbroken he would be to see his homeland. I knew it was going to be devastated. I said, well, this is the end of Gaza. Like, it's obviously this is it. Like, Hamas has made sure that my father's dream would never come true.
Oh.
Yeah. So
do you still have family in Gaza?
No. Those who were still there left to Qatar from the beginning, even before Israel retaliated. And so, yeah, nobody is there now.
Do you believe that your father's dream will never come true?
I do. Yeah. What he had hoped, I think is just not realistic. It's not feasible. It's not, I don't think, I think it's, maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I really believe that as long as there is an opportunity, as long as there is a land, like, it's kind of like right after World War II, asking the Jewish people, like, are you okay with, bordering Germany? Like, only 10% of them were Nazis. Like, you don't have to worry too much. Like, like, you might be okay. Like, of course not.
Yeah.
This is the country is still in trauma, in bleeding. Hostages are still not home. In a way, it's kind of not even the time to have that conversation. And in another way, it's like, I feel like it's disrespectful to even ask if that is a possibility. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that they've made themselves clear. It's been many, many decades of trying very hard to make this work. I spent the day today in Yad Vashem, which is a Holocaust memorial here in Jerusalem. And, you know, from the very beginning, from the very first we entered, and I just like immediately was crying. You know, it's so similar, so similar. It is, it's an ideology of hate, and it is not only in Gaza, it's all over the world. And there's a lot of money behind it. There's a lot of support behind it. But why would you even take that risk? Why would you ever take that risk again? You know?
Yeah.
So that's where I stand on that.
So, you know, you had a marriage to an extremist,
Who's an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Yeah.
and managed to extricate yourself from that. It's really an extraordinary story. I think that what I'd like to hear from you, because you're going to have insight that so few do, is you sit in Vancouver, which, like Toronto, like London, like many cities in the West, has become this just open cauldron of hatred towards Israel and Jews. How do you understand and process what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And this so-called left and Queers for Palestine
Mm-hmm.
and all these groups embracing Hamas?
Yeah. Yeah. I
What's
mean,
going on?
it's really the subtitle of my book, you know, leaping off the page, isn't it? You know, when I saw
Say it again.
Yeah, how the West empowers radical Muslims. It's that slow empowering, you know, drip by drip,
Yeah.
step by step. And now this is where we are. Now we see, you know, people screaming, gas the Jews in Australia, or screaming, you know, Takbir, Allahu Akbar. They're so happy that there was a protest going on the moment the Iranians struck Israel, and they interrupted the protest and they said, we just have some news for you. Israel's dropping UAVs going towards Israel, and they just erupted. Everybody was just cheering, and they're clanging their drums and everything, and then they're screaming out Takbir, you know. So it's like the streets of Toronto. Like this is Canada. This is my home. It's hard. I had tears of rage, you know. And then since then, people
It's my
have been,
hometown.
yeah, I know you.
And
feel
I
that
was
too.
there. I
Yeah.
was there in October, and I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid to walk around. But help us understand, Yasmine, what are they thinking?
They're not. That's the thing. It's ignorance. They're not thinking. It's just anti-Israel, anti-West, anti-America, right? Whether you're an Islamist or a Marxist, you agree on, you know, who the enemy is. But it's not like you were talking about Queers for Palestine or like strippers for Gaza, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Strippers for
Gaza?
Gaza?
There's strippers for Gaza.
Oh, I didn't hear that one.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I gotta look up that one.
Yeah, there's all sorts of like absolute craziness, absolute lunacy. Like I have seen videos of Hamas taking gay men, tying them to the back of motorcycles and dragging them down the streets of Gaza. That's what they do to homosexuals in that country. And then these people are like, you know, trans for Gaza or whatever. Like, you don't even understand who you're supporting. People don't take a step back from this like 10-second video that they just watched and say, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of research and understand like what is but for a lot of these, you know, up in their ivory tower, white liberal kids from, you know, middle America, they are just such easy fodder, you know, to give them a little clip and say, bad guy, white.
Yeah.
Good guy, brown.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
Easy little, you know.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple, and it works.
But
Yasmine, given that, you know, you have such insight on the extremists because you were married to one.
Yeah.
What can young activists do, or pro-Israel, or whoever not pro-Israel, just pro-morality? What can we do to strike at their weaknesses and to combat TikTok, social media, all this information? Like, do you have anything that could be strategic that we could be doing more of?
Yeah. Well, this is a war of ideas, right? That's what it comes down to. And so I think that, you know, we have to just counter their ideas with better ideas. We have to counter their propaganda with the truth, and it's a slow process. It's not going to be easy, but it's really important. And I have to tell you, as somebody who grew up Muslim, and my mom, like I said, is from Egypt, which is an incredibly, anti-Semitic population. She was much more anti-Semitic than my dad, which people think is so weird. Like, my dad wasn't anti-Semitic at all, actually, because he lived with Jewish people, and they were, his friends and people he's known, people he's worked with in his activism for peace in Gaza. And so it was, you can't really indoctrinate somebody with hate against someone that they know,
Yeah.
Whereas my mom had never met a Jewish person, as the same is true for almost, the rest of the Middle East other than Israel. There's very tiny percentages of Jewish people left because they were all expelled, right? Out of Yemen and Iraq and, Egypt, et cetera, Algeria. And so because they were all expelled, a lot of these people haven't actually even met Jewish people. And so it's easier for them to think of Jewish people and Israelis as these demons, these horrible people. They want to control us. They want to murder us. They want us dead, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that was the cognitive dissonance that broke through for me, was in high school, when I met a Jewish guy who said to me, "Oh, you're my cousin." And I was just like recoiled in horror, because I was an indoctrinated hijabi at that time. And for a Jewish man to say that I was his cousin, I was like, "Oh, how dare you say that?" And then I saw his face, and then I felt so ashamed, because he was surprised to see the hate on my face. He had not expected that, because he had such a completely different experience than I did. And then when we had that moment where we met up, he was like, "What? Why do you have such animosity towards me?" And the fact that he was so surprised made me feel so ashamed. And then I thought, why is he surprised? He's supposed to hate me too. He's supposed to want me dead. And so there was like a disconnect there that didn't make sense to me. And that's what made me, one of the many things that kind of broke through the cement of indoctrination and let in a little bit of light. But yes, it's been a very long process for me to, you have to cleanse yourself of all of that brainwashing, and being a part of Sharaka and going on this Holocaust education, this whole delegation going to, we'll be going to Poland afterwards, doing a tour of Auschwitz. Like, this is all for me sort of educating myself, but also repenting, You
don't have to repent. You're doing a lot of great work. Thank you. Yasmine, thank you so much again for everything you do, for making the time in what is, I know, a very busy schedule on your trip here. And you are such an inspiration.